Good morning, everyone. We're live now from the Polish Business Hub. I hope you all had your first coffee because we're gonna deep dive really quick, really deep into a topic that is of certain complexity, especially politically these days. Industrial decarbonization and energy transitions, competitiveness, opportunities, and the evolving role of the private sector. I'm delighted to have such a formidable panel here that represents a bunch of perspectives. And we are somewhat time limited, unfortunately. And most importantly, perhaps, I have to tell you that in a couple of minutes, we'll need to interrupt for a bunch of moments because we'll be honored to have the presence of the President of Poland, Andrzej Duda. So for that time, we'll interrupt just for a minute or two. Now, joining us today are Konrad Jar, Executive Director for Strategy and Innovation from Orlen, the major Polish oil and gas company. And Orlen has just unveiled its new strategy, so we're certainly going to hear about that. Professor Piotr Stankowski will be joining us in about 15 minutes or so, who is the head of, may I introduce him already, Chief Scientist at MIM Solutions from the University of Warsaw, and hopefully he'll tell us somewhat a little bit how he sees powering up the AI boom that is happening now. We have Bartosz Czyński, founder and managing director of Preventive Renewables, who hopefully is going to tell us a little bit about how he sees the renewables part of the decarbonization game these days. We have Dr. Tomasz Ludwicki, acting CEO of LOT Polish Airlines.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you. We have Filip Kamerit, VP for Strategy and Innovation from Enery, from Austria, right? And last but not least, we have Stefan Pujat, Chairman and CEO of Green Power House, who is going certainly to share a word or two about how he sees the hydrogen boom, or bust, as some say it.
With pleasure. Thank you
Wonderful.
for the
Thank
invitation.
You. Now, again, because we are somewhat time constrained, I would somewhat like to already pass the message, gentlemen, that if you could try to please put your arguments within 2 or 3 minutes for the first round, that would be lovely. This would allow us for a second round and then even perhaps to take a question or two from the audience. Now, to just maybe lay the groundwork, just to set the stage somewhat a little bit at the beginning. Decarbonization has been the big buzzword of the last couple of years, yet it seems endangered now, not least because we have the great power rivalry back at the doorstep. We have President Trump now inaugurated, who basically sees decarbonization rather as a burden than the opportunity, quite the contrary to what the EU still says. We have China that does as much in renewables as it does in traditional traditional oils and fuels. And so my question to you, and maybe let's make it the theme of the first round, so to speak, is how do you see decarbonization of industries that you are somewhat invested in, either in terms of action investments or with your expertise? What are the big things that you expect from this year? Konrad, maybe first with you, because Orlen has just unveiled the strategy, and I'm sure there's a bunch of points to be said.
Sure, of course. Hello, everyone. I think our strategy was unveiled in quite an interesting time when we have a lot of divergence when it comes to the energy transition. The what element is actually well known, so I think we can talk about solutions in a second. But of course, I won't get into the details of all the things we're trying to do as part of the energy transition, because we probably don't have enough time in a panel. But the how became quite important. Given this divergence, we saw a lot of international oil and gas companies sort of zigzagging between, and pushing ahead with the energy transition and then sort of taking a step back. So the how became a really important question for us, and we were trying to find a solution that's very pragmatic and that's also very flexible. I think that element is quite important. The what, I mean, we have a lot of challenges. Decarbonization of our downstream sector. Hydrogen plays a critical role in this, and of course, scaling up hydrogen and making it viable and cost efficient is a huge challenge. But we're also developing renewable energy. In our strategy, we've really demonstrated a strong ambition in this area. But Orlen is a huge company with quite a big span of businesses and assets. So there's multiple energy transition initiatives and investments planned. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Moving perhaps clockwise in this round, over to you, Philip. Your company is very much invested in electrifying industries. Can I put it that way?
Exactly. So Energy was found really to provide a green alternative for industrial clients to receive clean, affordable, and reliable power to power their industrial processes. So we really focus on providing the most competitive green electricity. We strongly believe in wind in the Baltics, in solar from the Black Sea, and we combine that to really attractive offerings for our industrial clients. In the upcoming year, we have a strong rollout of battery capacities upcoming that are crucial for the grid to make the electricity and the intermittency of renewables more reliable for industrial clients to consume. And we start more and more helping or jointly investing in decarbonization with our industrial clients and really think of how to move to the next energy verticals after electricity. So heat is a big thing. Where we think of how to provide low and mid heat segments, industrial steam, and also mobility is a vertical we strongly believe is ideal for electrification and power with renewable electricity. There are excellent routes from ports to logistics centers that are below 300 kilometers, where are various trucks going back and forth that don't need to be powered by fossil fuels. So we want to provide an alternative for that and see that as a kind of growth lever to expand our market share in really providing green electricity and a decarbonized alternative. Our mandate is across Central Eastern Europe, so we really focused on the region and really keeping industry here and ensuring that they have what they need to manufacture competitive products at competitive prices.
Well, my first takeaway from what you have just said is basically that business ingenuity is a big part of the equation if you want to keep your business competitive these days, right?
Exactly. And also from a technological perspective, in the last 5 years, the landscape completely changed how you can consume and power your industrial processes. So we really want to partner with our clients to help them manage the transition in the best way for them, so they can be competitive on the long run.
Lovely. Hello, Professor. Great to have you here. Clockwise again, like I mentioned. So, but over to you. You are based in London, but you have Paul. You have the double edge of seeing things from within and outside the Brexit zone, so to speak.
Yes,
and
sadly, it's outside.
right. And as an investor and someone who has been involved in the industry for quite a long time, right? And having seen how this thing has evolved in the last couple of years and even in a longer perspective, what would you say are the major elements that you deem are the most important for the discussion today?
Okay, so actually you mentioned in your introduction, in your first sentence, the US and China, and I was walking here and I got one of the people handing out the FT, and I opened up the front page and it was Trump stopping 300 billion of IRA the designated funds for the clean transition. Right. And then the second page was an article about Chinese electric vehicles. So it's kind of there in a snapshot. You have what's happening in the transition. You have a petro state. You have the US possibly turning back into a petro state, whilst China is forcing ahead as an electro state. And we'll see who's right at the end. But I fear the US may be making a significant mistake. But actually, coming back to the topic, so for me, the barometer of strategy is somebody like Orlen. So when I look at the Polish market, I look at the strategy for Orlen or strategy for other, let's say PGE and Orlen are the two biggest players in the transition space from the state perspective. And Orlen's got a strategy which is multi-fuel and renewable and electrification, which is great. And then you have a player like Enery, who I also have the pleasure of knowing quite well, who's showing you where the private capital is going. And the private capital, funded, by the way, by some intergovernmental as well funds in the 3Cs initiative, is telling you, I'm going cross-border, I'm going to be funding different technologies, and I'm going to be selling that energy to industrial players, which Enery is doing in Bulgaria and Romania and all over the place. So that's very comforting, and that's the way I see it going. So it's multi-fuel. It is certainly decarbonizing heavy industries through mechanisms like the PPA, like long-term power purchase agreements, and at the same time, it's introducing the stabilizing factor, which both Enery and Orlen is doing through batteries. So that for me is the kind of tri-technology solution to the stability of the grid and to the transition. So you have different technologies, different regions, where PV, onshore wind, and batteries to stabilize it. It's quite amazing actually, because in Poland, 3 years ago there was no batteries at all. Nobody was thinking about batteries. Right now we have 3 gigawatts of batteries with a capacity contract awarded to help stabilize the grid. So it's quite amazing how quickly this is happening. Yeah, to come back to your original question, I think the transition is going well in our region, and I'm a bit concerned about the big forces coming from the US.
I see. I guess my takeaway from what you have just said, if I were to narrow it down in ChatGPT, just one phrase, that would be that the private sector, in line with the theme of today, is key to decarbonizing industries. Absolutely.
Absolutely, and the state sector is setting the barometer, and the private sector is more nimble and kind of implementing it on a more micro scale.
Right. Precisely. Speaking of private sector being more nimble and decarbonizing it through both private and public endeavors, Stefan, so you are an advocate for hydrogen, a solution that has as many friends and allies as it has enemies and opponents these days. A couple of years ago only, the EU has gone big on hydrogen. The plants are there. The Germans have adopted their strategies that are like that flywheel for the whole thing to really take off. But yet, for instance, last summer, there was the EU Code of Auditors saying that, hey, these plans are unrealistic because of this, and that. But yet, the push is going on, right? So how do we make it permanent? How do we make sure that hydrogen is going to rise up slowly but gradually into the bigger energy transition equation?
First of all, again, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be at the Polish hub. First of all, I will give you a little bit of background, because that is quite critical. I spent 20 years in a company called Euroclear, and this company has 40 trillions of assets under custody, and it clears 3 trillions a day. So it's like 900 trillions a year, and it's about 10 times the world GDP. And the whole question is how much of that money is deployed into the green energy transition? Mm-hmm. And the answer is very little, almost zero. All right. So you have a little bit of EIB and big supranationals that are pushing, but it's very tiny. So we are the Mickey Mouse type of starting point, in my view. All right. Now I'm taking a 30 to 50 years long-term strategy view on that on this energy transition, and the reason why I strongly believe in hydrogens is not for tomorrow. Number one. And number two, it is not suitable for actually the European market, and to some extent the American market. Because in Europe, we have a very sophisticated infrastructure already in place. So it's quite easy to put, those battery systems and to upgrade everything that we have. Pretty simple. But if you look at China, if you look at India, those guys, they have a complete different view of the world of energy transition. It's a little bit the wire technology, when I was in telecom in France, where the Telecom France people said, never the mobile technology will pick up because France were investing in PABX and all this very sophisticated ecosystem, and so for them, mobile was really a little tiny part of the industry. Now I don't know any French company, family that has still a main line. Nobody has a main line. Everybody has mobile. So I think that green hydrogen's transition in 30 years from now will be exactly the same level in terms of scale. For cargo shipping, for Africa, for the global south at large, because they don't have any infrastructure. You can't put batteries to try to wire the African market. There's no chance whatsoever. So hydrogen's long term, I think, is something that is going to make a difference. And then the second point is exactly what you mentioned. It's actually a geopolitical game. It has nothing to do with decarbonization and nothing. Everything is about money. And the guy who are actually putting their pion today will, in potentially in 30 years from now, reap the benefit of their current strategy. And I just want to give an example. I was telling you earlier, but I kept it secret. It's purposely for this moment. Please. Because we have this wonderful oil and gas company here, and I'm French, so I can say that, right? Europe is so technocrat at times that if you look at the taxonomy put at the extreme, in terms of encouraging competition, we kill the transition business development that is extremely pragmatic. So we all know, I'm not going to cite the country, but we all know who has, and it's not the US, who has a lot of oil and gas. And those guys, they say, well, who knows if this technology will work or not? We have no idea. But it's our own backyard, it's our own back office. We are going to decarbonize our refinery production. Say that in Europe, in European Parliament, people say, you try to invest to decarbonize a dirty industry? Are you crazy? And the guys, they said, no, we are not doing that. We are actually training ourselves, learning that thing, because we have the capital.
Yes.
Because we have the capital, we have the time, because we have the energy grid anyway under control, right? And those guys, they are anticipating how to actually keep being relevant in the game long term. When we are starting to, or we try to, articulate what hydrogen is or whatever, it doesn't have to be hydrogen. But I'm just simply saying the energy transition, it's a geopolitical game. Only people who have money and have a little bit of a vision. So take the Chinese.
Absolutely. Yeah.
These guys, for them, 30 years is fast. We work on 3 years return. There's no VC, no private investment, nobody can compete against some countries. That's why we do a public-private partnership, sorry for that, in order to actually accompany the transition. So I'm going to stop there, but it's a very nice way of, training yourself on using your own operation to try to optimize the raffinery production.
And the same thing about China. China is right now the single biggest investor in offshore wind, onshore wind, PV, electric vehicles. If you go to Beijing, if I went to Beijing for the first time to try and negotiate a coal-fired power plant technology for Poland. Elektrownia Północ, a massive 800 megawatt coal-fired power plant, which I then wrote off as a CFO of a company. When I went to Beijing, I had to wear a face mask 15 years ago. It wasn't very pleasant. You go to Beijing now, super clean air. Every car, or almost every car, new car is electric. They are doing what the US sadly is not doing. So it's a critical theme.
Lovely. Doctor, what I think we're missing in this discussion thus far is the question of exactly the very specific industry that has been the most pointed out kid in the room, I think, which is aviation.
Yeah.
We should cut on flying, or should, because how much it's polluting, how much it's emitting. Yet the question might be actually quite different, isn't it? About the fuel and how sustainable it is or isn't, right?
Yeah, thank you again for the introduction and for invitation for this meeting. I think it's good to have both business voice, especially from the industries called bad boys, bad girls in the air. And let me marry this with my academic background, because my doctoral degree comes from the University of Warsaw. I'm really happy to sit next to Piotr, also from the University of Warsaw. And let me bring it like just two perspectives. First is operational one. Second is my field of expertise, which is strategy. So just a quick poll. Many of you have come here to Davos by plane, probably. And many of you have flown from Warsaw to Zurich, of course, by lot. I mean, have you found anything special about this trip? Nothing? Okay. Everything fine, on time? That's good. That's how we deliver. However, there's something that you need to know. So most probably, it depends a little bit on the rotation. The plane you've flown consumes 26–30% less fuel to the traditional planes we used to have. Would you like to pay more for this trip? Probably not. Whereas the plane costs us quite a lot more. I couldn't tell you how much, because we are now in a tender process for acquisition of 50 more planes for regional flights, which is, of course, part of the technological transition, but at the same time, this is part of our decarbonization strategy. So it means, in principle, so agree, I'm just giving you a very specific example, that it will cost. And that's a challenge. And actually, from an operational perspective, and going back to the fuel thing, we need, and that's a regulation by the European Union, to have a certain portion of SAF, so-called. This is sustainable aviation fuel, which can be mixed with the traditional fuel. And there is a requirement going on kind of in a slow pace. And you know what's the challenge we have right now? Is actually delivery of this fuel in all of the airports we operate. We need to buy it, we need to purchase it, but it's not being supplied in all of the locations. And then there is another big question, which is, we are a global airline. We fly to many different continents. And then there is a question if other airlines have the same requirements to use this fuel, which is more expensive because our friends from Orlen, they need to produce it for us and they need to invest into technology. So this will also cost them more. So then there is a question of regulation. And if this question of regulation is not properly handled, then like with electric cars, European aviation would be very hard. It would be very hard for it to compete on a global base. It's so sad, because we have Airbus. It's a very powerful company, a lot of new technologies, and then there is a question who would be buying, Airbus planes in the future. So this is a very real challenge we are all facing in terms of the costs. And let me bring one more, which also is connected to the regulation and technology, actually. One of the problems we all face is that actually the S-curve of technology, of existing technology, is at its very end, And in different industries, we have different situations. For some, we already have some working solutions. Like, in my personal opinion, would be an electric car. As a driver of electric car, I can say so. This is my perception. And this is not just my perception. China is confirming this in a huge investment into this technology. And unfortunately, in the aviation, there are some technologies, but there is yet time to come for them to be on the market. And because of the safety of aviation, the introduction process will be very long, because it need to be certified in all of the different geographies, in all of the different tests. So I think the problem that I see is that regulation is set when you don't have solution. And this is the problem, especially in our field. So again, thank you very much, and let me pass on to the next speaker.
Sure. Thank you so much. Shifting sands is the description I would use, I think, to describe this sort of situation that the airline industry is trading on. But there is another sort of, to speak, new elephant in the room, AI, Professor, right? And the new question that has just arisen 3 years ago, no one really was thinking about it until we realized that there is a new technology that is so energy consuming that we really do not have enough power capacity in the first place. So now, in the US, where the market, works somewhat differently, as we see, a company like Microsoft can just approach the government and tell them, hey, let's power up again this now no longer active nuclear power plant, right? SMRs may be part of the equation once they arrive, right, in Europe. But what do you think is actually the nitty-gritty of the picture?
So, indeed, there is a new bad boy coming. AI is also kind of the estimation right now. The data center around the world use around 1% of energy, electric energy. So it's kind of, it's visible, but it's not something big. But some estimates and projection, it's hard to say whether these are kind of, optimistic or pessimistic, say that in 10 years this will be around 13%. So it's like 1/10 or more than 1/10 of energy produced will be used by computing AI or using to kind of power AI. So this is a lot, and it's really changing the picture. So there are big companies like Google who had kind of this decarbonization plans and wanted to actually power the data center in a green way, but they gave up. So last year they kind of announced that due to the consumption of the power by kind of the AI, they are no longer kind of following the plan of decarbonization, of having green energy centers. So this really kind of changes the perspective of big companies how this works, because the consumption is huge, and with the investments of in AI. So as you probably heard, like 2 days ago, Donald Trump announced that US will invest $500 billion into new data centers, a Stargate computer. And you should kind of think that if you build such a computer and it costs X, then the energy consumption will be X by 10. So they will be paying $50 billion for energy to power these computers per year. So this is a huge kind of thing as well for energy, and it kind of plays a role a lot, meaning because AI will be, everybody will be trying to use AI, and we want to have, for example, data centers as well in Poland, and it really changes your perception. Whether you want to build one, because in Poland we have high energy prices, so it changes the perspective. Like really. If the investment is for 5 years, then the energy prices, when they differ by 100%, by a factor of 2, it really changes your perceptions completely. Whether you should locate it here or not, it really matters. So it will imply a lot, taking into account that this will be probably 1/10 of the energy consumption. We should really plan it and see how to arrive it. And of course, the atomic kind of power plants are in play right now.
Yeah, thank you. Well, certainly then, somewhat what you have just said corroborates the point that AI adds that another layer complexity to the energy landscape. It's already very complex, as you can tell. Before we move forward, maybe just quickly, did you want to add something?
No.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking. Anyhow, recapitulate slightly what you have just said. So basically, the bottom line is that decarbonization, where it goes, well, follow the money, right? That's one. 2, being that the energy demand basically rises because of the new technologies. But then also there's the question of how to reduce the energy costs in different sectors, not least in the aviation one. But then on top of this, and all the elements we have not had the time yet to mention, there's the question that has been tackled yesterday during another wonderful panel, energy security. And it sort of reminds me of something that, and anecdotically, I'll just try to tack it in as before we move on with the second round. Last year I was in Serbia and I had the pleasure of visiting their largest power plant, coal power plant, where the head engineer was disturbingly honest by saying that, well, it's coal powered, and the coal we use is basically dug out like 20 kilometers straight line from the power plant. It's terrible, low quality, not caloric, but it's ours. It's ours. That was his response. So they don't really care. Now, this is Serbia. Why I'm mentioning Serbia is because we are now witnessing an age of over-regulation, and there's CBAM coming, and all the other regulations that you are concerned about in your industry. So my question to you, and this will be, let's say, a less guided discussion now, and for the last 10 minutes or so that we have, I would like to collect your thoughts on the regulations that you are concerned about, that concern your industries, or you feel like maybe there are some sectors that are not regulated enough. There are certain changes that are needed. What would this be? Who would like to start? Roland?
Sure, I'm happy to start. I mean, I don't want to question the regulations put in place or sort of argue or make the case for sort of lower, you know, a big change in regulations. But of course, RED 3 is in transport and RED 3 in industry is a huge challenge. And I'm not saying this just as Roland. I think the European industry as a whole basically is looking for ways to meet those ambitious targets. A lot of those targets are actually set on the feedstock, for example, and a lot of these advanced feedstocks for low carbon fuels, they don't really exist today. You can't go out and just buy them. You actually have to develop a whole market of advanced and renewable feedstocks. So it is a challenge, and it's a challenge for the entire industry. I think aviation, as you mentioned, because it does have a lot of the refuel EU aviation element of Fit for 55. Also has sub-targets for RFNBO, so renewable fuels of non-biological origin, aka synthetic fuels. So these synthetic fuels do not exist today. There's a lot of projects. None of them have actually reached FID. So it is a challenge, and it comes back to the cost of green hydrogen. So there's quite a lot of challenges like this. The use of green ammonia or low carbon ammonia, I should say, in fertilizer production, for example, is a huge challenge for the European industry. So there's a lot of specific regulations. I think nobody's contesting the direction, but really the specifics around a lot of these regulatory frameworks.
Gotcha.
Philip? I mean, on the regulation side, the regulation is one side and the economics is another side. I think the economics of certain power sources and feedstocks and the resulting products will lead the direction into a certain area anyway, and the most competitive products gonna win and gonna be used for a certain use case. Mobility, we see a strong movement into electric vehicles, not because regulation is there and subsidies are given, but because it's a very competitive and cheap option to get from A to B. And I think that's going to be a key driver. I think what is important is that we have a clear commitment and a roadmap to price the negative externalities of carbon emissions for products that are produced in the European Union or imported in the European Union. I think we have to think on how we deal with exports and how we stay competitive on a global market. On a company level, as you mentioned, energy security, I think you have to be smart about using the right power source for the right purpose. And I think electrification is on the rise for a lot of use cases and will be the most competitive source for a lot. There will be some use cases for hydrogen in processes that require extreme high heat, where you're gonna need those. And there are going to be other feedstocks required for the chemicals productions that we all need on a day-to-day basis. And I think technology in AI has a lot of enablers to deal with the complexity that comes with finding the right power source and feedstock, but also finding it in the right moment, because the challenge that electricity has is that it has to be produced in the moment you consume it, or released in the moment you consume it. And AI plays a crucial role in steering your processes to the right moments when a lot of electricity is available. And then you have the management aspect around it. We did an investment in a company called Renewable, where you can match your electricity consumption with guarantees of origin on a 24/7 hourly matching base, which actually fits with the Renewable Energy Directive 3 for a lot of use cases. So I think there is a lot of building blocks out there We just need to put them together and are looking into a great future for decarbonizing our industry.
That's encouraging. But briefly,
Yes, we just have to move fast because this conclusion that you mentioned that Google's pulling out of the decarbonization commitments, drill baby drill in the US because they need the energy fast, I presume, so they've got it already. So if we don't move fast, if we don't simplify the development rules around onshore wind, PV, offshore wind, and allow them to be developed fast and connected quickly, it's just always gonna be falling behind. And with the long development periods, costs rise. So for me, whatever the solution has to be, somebody just has to cut through the red tape and just get faster, because otherwise it's just not going to happen.
sure. Stefan, subsidizing hydrogen.
Yeah, well, it's more about the regulation topic you just mentioned. So let me share with you a little bit of my experience. Capital market with Clearstream, so Euroclear Clearstream, 60 trillion, 1/4 of the world's capital market in one backbone. Okay, regulation is a political agenda. By the time that some bureaucrat think about the right regulation, you have the Chinese and the Indians and the Americans that take the complete opposite direction. Okay, and that has been seen on the taxonomy, green taxonomy, and all the investment back and forth and stuff like that. So if we look at the protection of the planet, if we are asking ourselves what quantum, what AI at scale means for the global warming, it's pretty scary. If we are saying that actually we need to increase energy consumption at scale, it's pretty scary. So, I think that we have to be a little bit mindful of in which game we really want to play. And that's why I personally believe in hydrogen, not because I love hydrogen, not because it's cost efficient and all of that. For me, this is a transition thing. In 50 years from now, this is the only energy that actually takes the air and produce water for population that, if you can't drink clean water and you have a lot of electricity, you still die, right? So there is a purpose behind. And I think that we need to be really careful of which planet we are trying to create in the next 30 to 50 years. I will pause there, and I am in favor of portfolio diversification in terms of energy transition. So I'm not just an hydrogen fan, but I'm just simply trying to focus on the fundamentals. Thank you.
Big solution oriented. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gentlemen?
it's good to be the one before the last one, because I can a little bit comment on what you have mentioned before. And let me just bring to perspective. First, about politics. Europe is and will be always political. So we couldn't, I don't agree with this. I mean, we couldn't detach this concept. However, let me refer to the Polish presidency that we have now holding. And, sometimes it's good to put things, openly, like to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Green Deal, Should we stick to this, or maybe should we make some changes? And I think one of the biggest challenges we are facing then in politics, this feedback loop is not moving fast enough, That we can clearly see, something is not working. So instead of, trying to push it even harder, we need to do some changes, But I don't think that this will happen soon. And, Polish presidency is just half a year, so it's really hard. But we can push things into the right direction. I strongly believe in this. But secondly, let me go back to more operational perspective, because on one hand, we can think we can do nothing, politics, big things, technologies. And we can try to be, we could be stuck in the moment, which I think is wrong. And we at LOT, actually, we are trying to use, the existing technologies for the decarbonization process. So for example, with planes, it's really hard. We do the best we can. The problem is everybody else is doing the same, because it's very hard. I mean, there are just 3 major plane manufacturers, 3, 4, depending on how you count engine manufacturers. So, everybody pretty much is doing the same thing with very few options available. However, in terms, for example, of the rest of our operations, we have a close collaboration with Orlen, and we are thinking about using hydrogen or electricity, especially for the operations in the car operations, There are many options. These are heavy-duty operations, so there is a lot of application in this field. And on the other hand, let me now face Piotr and mention that actually in terms of the efficiency, we think about the CO2 emissions per person, per passenger. And using AI, we can have more full planes. So actually per person, per pax, consumption will be lower. So it's a question of using existing technologies for our stake. That's what we need to do right now.
Yeah, indeed. Piotr?
So thanks for mentioning AI. So it certainly has a huge application in optimizing kind of energy consumption and different processes. Of course, I mean what was mentioned, it's not a game changer, meaning that like we can use, produce more efficient fuel and buy better airplanes. This reduces the energy consumption by say 30% on something. I mean it's important, but it's in AI there is a different dimension. Yeah, so like I mean there is this story of Chinese large language model, like this DeepSeek model. So they were able to train or generate the same model with like 30 times less computing power. Yeah, so the models produced by Google, by OpenAI, the training cost is around $100 million. Whether the Chinese did the same, I mean they did better model, but they spent $6 million. Like 30 times less. Yeah, and it of course transforms into energy consumption, and this is something which we really need to remember, that kind of really the algorithms you use, I mean, have way more impact on how much energy this AI is consuming. Yeah, so maybe we should ban the old large language models that Google and OpenAI are using, because they are not energy efficient. I mean, it's 30 times difference, so it's huge kind of impact. Yeah, so I think there's regulations for kind of using inefficient models in AI. They need to come, because we should not kind of be allowing. I mean, the progress is there, but the impact is as well huge. So there will be something coming.
We have all shared fascinating insights on a number of topics that make up this great team. It feels like we'll need more panels next year devoted to each of those, because we have just run out of time. So the last request I have is to the audience to join me in applauding this wonderful panel. Thank you.